What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy, back again with another video. Today I wanted to talk about, very quickly, a card that should be on everyone's side deck radar, Book of Eclipse. This is a card that has seen a lot of sideboard play in the OCG recently with the release of Photon Hypernova, which is coming to the TCG next month, and has some pretty devastating cards in the format that kind of are annoying to deal with, and then that's where Book of Eclipse comes in. So really quickly, let's talk about this card. Its effect is change all face-up monsters on the field to face down defense position, and then drawback is during the end phase of this turn, change as many face down defense position monsters your opponent controls as possible to face up defense position. Then your opponent draws cards equal to the number of monsters changed face up by this effect. So it is a quick play spell card, which are always one of the best card interruptions that you can have in the existence of the game. One thing to note is that it does not target, unlike Book of Moon, which is super crucial. And then the other thing is it hits all monsters, including all of your opponent's monsters, as well as all of your own face-up monsters, which is very useful. And the reason why people have decided to side this card predominantly is because of this card, Kashira Shangri-La. This is a new XYZ for the Shangri-La deck, the pure deck that comes out in the next booster pack with a plethora of support, Kashira, Rise Heart, which kind of puts this deck onto the map, on the competitive scene. And this card, Shangri-La, it essentially locks out your opponent's zones each time you banish one card from your opponent's possession face down, which the deck has, like, basically every card does that. So you can actually start locking out your opponent's zones. And you can also do that on your opponent's turn, because when you have Shangri-La and a Rise Heart on the board, which is really easy for the deck to spit out, the moment your opponent starts playing cards like spell cards or any sort of cards, they will get banished with the continuous effect of Kashira A-Rise Heart, which will then trigger the effect of Kashira Shangri-La, so they start locking out all of your zones. On their turn, they can usually at least lock like 3, sometimes even 4, I'm pretty sure. And then, you can only play like 1 or 2 cards maybe on your turn before your zones start getting completely locked. So, after that mouthful, let's talk about why Book of Eclipse deals with this. It flips down all of the face-up monsters, including Shangri-La, which then frees up your zone. So the ruling is if this card is flipped face down or leaves the table, your zones will be freed up. But the annoying thing is that it can't actually protect itself by card destruction. So cards like Raigeki and Dark Hole will not actually free your zones because this monster can detach a material to protect itself. So that's where Book of Eclipse kind of does the job by flipping it face down, bypassing that protection effect that it does have. And then the other thing is it deals with the other monsters too. So it deals with A-Rise Heart as well as potential Fenrir that they might have on the table that just might be annoying, Like this card obviously is a walking macrocosmos, so it banishes everything just like Darklaw would. And then the other effect is you can actually, once per chain, you can detach 3 materials as a quick effect from this card, target 1 card on the field, banish it face down. So any card. It's a Trident that can banish any card on the field face down, so that's always very annoying. So this card is a blanket wipe against all of that. Now, one thing to note is that this card can actually get Ash Blossomed because of the effect that does allow your opponent to draw in the end phase. That is a part of the card's effect when you activate it, so you can actually respond to it with Ash Blossom, which is kind of annoying. So if people do choose to play Ash Blossom again, then Book of Eclipse can actually have a drawback there. The other card that you can kind of compare is Swords of Concealing Light, I would say, because it does more or less the same thing, but it is a continuous spell card, which is very easy for them to deal with. Even something like a Cosmic Cyclone or like anything that can use in response to this, even something like an A-Rise Heart effect to banish this when they have 3 materials means that you just don't get the effect. So I think Book of Eclipse is way better being a quick play spell card. And then the other part of this card's effect is that it is kind of like a Waboku. So if you're approaching time, maybe you can use this card defensively. You set this card, they go into battle phase, they try to swing, you flip Book of Eclipse, they flip all 4 or 5 monsters face down. Yeah, they get to draw like a bunch of cards in the end phase, but hey, we didn't take damage this turn. So that's always really relevant. And in the past formats, I actually remember doing this a lot with the card. It's very versatile offensively and defensively. And let's take a look at some of the cards that it does deal with. Against Tyrant's the best deck in the metagame, it's actually not that bad. It deals with like a Rukalos, maybe a Dragos Stapelia. Obviously, they're going to have other ways to get monsters on the table. If they have something like a Beatrice, they can just chain Beatrice's effect. So on a new chain, they are able to fuse another name on board. But again, it does bait out the Beatrice, which is a big deal, right? Like, we're baiting out cards. We're getting at least a 1-for-1 value by flipping down that Rukalos with the Book of Eclipse. So more or less, it's already done its job at that point. You kind of can turn off Shuliek if they have like a board full of tier limits monsters or the Rukalos. Obviously, they can still have this and also get other monsters onto the table with the effects that they have in their hand or in their grave. But when you flip down everything with a Book of Eclipse as your initial move, you can actually get the ignition effect. The first ignition effect will probably pop off. So if you have something like a Labyrinth card or like, let's say you're playing Tour Guide for whatever reason and you go normal summon effect, they can't really do anything because Suliak is face down. They don't control any tier limits monsters, and they're kind of banking on you activating something in order for them to play on your turn with something like Happiness, right? So your effect will still go through. And again, like the 1-for-1 value is just good enough that I think it's warranted. That potentially maybe this card will be main decked if Kashira is just as good as, you know, people are hyping it out to be. The other thing it deals with in the meta, Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds and Flounderies and Empen. Like, this just flips them down, so you can special summoning non-wind monsters, and then they are kind of confined to... They're forced to either use their Dreaming Town if they have that set, or rely on the map if they don't even have Dreaming Town, right? Which is fine, because we're, again, getting value out of it. We're getting rid of the Statue of the Stormwinds and also the Empen that they have on the table. So they kind of have to juggle, like, do they want to summon another Empen, or do they want to summon, like, an Apex Avian, right? The chances are they're just going to go into another Empen, and then you can easily deal with it because the statue is gone. Against Kashira, again, like they sometimes have a Fenrir on the table as well in their full combo, so getting rid of this, like the effect of Banish, you're just turning it face down, that's always really, really good. And turning things face down means that you have something to swing into, so if you are playing a deck with Zeus, you can actually make Zeus a lot more easier because you are attacking into defense monsters, whereas previously they might have like big dudes in attack mode and you just can't crash. Against Sprite, it's not bad either. When they go normal summon like a Beaver or even normal summon any level 2 in order to unlock their Sprite effects in their hand, you can just flip Book of Eclipse and then that books it face down so they don't control level 2 monsters, so they can't special summon any of their Sprites as extenders. And obviously when they go Beaver, summon another Beaver, it's kind of bad, you know, like they are going to draw 2 cards in the end phase. But if they don't have starter, they're going to pass their turn 9 times out of 10. So we are, you know, in a lot better spot than if they happen to go into their full combo, right? Like, yeah, they draw 2 cards, they draw in the hand traps, maybe some Bystials, but it doesn't really matter because you're likely in a better spot than you would have been if their Beaver was unimpeded and then they started playing into their combo, right? So it is another interruption to have, and I really, really like that in that case. And they also can't link off with face down monsters, right? So if they summon it to an awkward zone, they can get really, really punished. If someone went like normal Beaver summon in the first and third column, like their elf can only point to 1 free space, right? So it kind of locks them in that sense. It also turns off Kashira Paprias. I forgot to mention against Kashira. This is a new spell card coming out that they rely on to summon out a bunch of dudes from their deck. You target 1 Kashira monster you control, special summon 1 Kashira monster with a different attribute from your deck in defense mode. So it checks for the attribute on the resolution. So when we Book of Eclipse, it can no longer have an attribute because it's face down. So if they went like Unicorn, search Papias, activate it, target Unicorn, and you flip down the Unicorn with Book of Eclipse, then they're not able to resolve this with an effect. So it just goes to the graveyard. So it's essentially a 1-for-1. It just cancels out the Papias, which is very, very good, I think. And then aggressively, you can use it to push past hand traps. You know, things like Imperm, Veiler, and Ghost Mourner all target, and they're pretty prevalent in the metagame. So if you're playing a deck where you want to push through like a certain effect, like even if you're playing tournaments, you go summon Rhinoheart effect, and they chain like effect Veiler, or like on your kid or something, you can just go Book of Eclipse, book it down, flip it down, resolve the effect, and then later you can either use your Perler Rhino to pop your face down Kick Hallows to get the mill 5, or do something else fancy to get it into the graveyard. So, yeah, and that's really more or less why I think this card can be really, really good. There are some other reasons that are niche depending on the metagame, but I'm just looking at the market right now on TCG Player. This card is really, really cheap. It has a billion different printings. Like, obviously, the Astro Pack 8 one, the first holo printing, it seems to be the highest rarity that the players have chosen. So the market price is selling for like 10s, 10 to 15s. But again, there is a ultra rare version for only like $2, I think. You know, the one from Dual Devastator, it's literally selling for dollars. If you guys have a local shop, or if you have access to TCG Player, if you're in the States, definitely start picking these up, at least a playset, maybe more if you want to have them as trade bait, because I think this card will be very, very popular in the TCG metagame if all goes well with the Kashira deck being quite good in the metagame. It's just like, obviously the Kashira deck's not going to be the best deck by any means. Tier Elements is still like got them beat in that sense, but it's going to be an annoyance. And I think like not having a proper side deck against this deck can actually hurt you in the long run in the competitive scene if you're playing like a long YCS, like 10, 12 rounds. So I think players will actually be siding Book of Eclipse. There will be some Glass Cannon players playing this deck, just like we had like Eldritch and Trap players in the past. So definitely pick this up if you haven't already. We do have commons as cheap as like 30 cents, 16 cents, 4 cents even. So definitely get some playsets of this card. Looking at like some of the boards, even like this is like an average tier elements board. Obviously, sometimes they have like Elf and Dweller. It could vary, but again, like the 1-for-1 on the Rukalis, you also bait the Time Thief Reader here. You bait the Beatrice. It gets like a lot of value. You're getting like a 1-for-3 almost in terms of actual value because you're baiting your opponent to use those effects that they would have waited normally. And the less knowledge that they have of what you're playing or what you have, the better, right? Like they don't know what to fuse into, so that's always a good thing. Again, we were talking about the Kashira board previously. This just books everything. It frees your zones as well if they were locked by this guy. It also turns off the A-Rise Heart so they can't start banishing anything. And then against the Flunderies deck, yeah, you obviously just book everything, so they do have to use this face down Dreaming Town. And if you don't normal summon anything into their map, you can just easily juggle that and have that accounted for, remove that, and then normal summon into your plays. So yeah, really quickly, I just want to make a quick video on the existence of this card and why it's so good to pick up. So if you guys haven't checked that out, definitely pick it up. It's really cheap right now. And if you guys like this video, rate, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on Book of Eclipse in general, what you guys think, if it's going to be popular, if the Kashira deck will be popular enough that people will be siding this, or if there are other better options, things like Swords of Concealing Light maybe, or, any other cards that you can think of. I'll see you guys in the next video.